Welcome to Working for Women, the Independent Women's Forum podcast, where we are changing the conversation about women and public policy for the better.
Hi, I'm Carrie Lukas, the Managing Director of the Independent Women's Forum. Welcome to the latest edition of the Working for Women podcast. I'm very happy to be joined today by IWF Senior Fellow Patrice Onwuka, and we are going to talk about a little bit about technology and the issue of increased automation. You know, Patrice, I tend to be a big fan of technological progress. I'm 43, and in my lifetime, I've seen the personal computer go from a rarity in a family home to something that everybody's carrying the equivalent of in their pockets. Our new ability to communicate and connect has created new work paradigms and allowed us to be in touch in ways that previously were impossible. And when I hear about increased automation, like the creation of things like self-driving cars and delivery systems, I tend to think about the upsides, the ability to bring down costs of goods and open more doors for people elsewhere. But, I know there's also, there's some downsides too. But first I want to start off, and if you can tell us a little bit more about sort of the benefits that people should expect from automation, and then what's on the horizon. What are we talking about here with this new next wave of technology?
Sure. Well, yeah, Carrie, I totally agree with you. I was right there when my family bought our first home computer. Before then, I remember computers being the size of a massive room that made all of this sound. We would go to the computer room, and it was like the biggest thing in the world. Now I carry one in my pocket. And I think about our kids, they'll probably have holograms. That's probably what the next phase of technology will deliver. But I love how our world is becoming more like the Jetsons, if you remember that cartoon from the 80s, where, it makes life easier in so many ways. I mean, you talked about lowering costs. When you think about just getting around from a meeting downtown to your office, I tend to Uber there, and that's just, someone with a car, picking me up, and we do a cashless transaction through our smartphones, and I get dropped off safely, and we're good. When it comes to providing opportunity, so on the other end, the driver, they've just made some money. And there are lots of people who are now able to have flexible employment opportunities because of technology. There are people who are making, families who are making earnings just by renting out a room in their home. We talk about home sharing or room sharing, so to speak, and that just allows you to put your spare bedroom, even your entire house, on a website to let a perfect stranger borrow it, and they pay you for that. That person probably saves more than if they stayed at a regular hotel. And you as a family, you can be pulling down something like $8,000 on average, working through a website like Airbnb. So that's a tremendous amount of opportunity and earnings right there just for typical Americans. And I especially love that technology is offering opportunity to those with criminal records, for people who have been locked out of every other types of jobs because, they made a mistake in their past. Now, all of a sudden, their different TaskRabbit is allowing you to offer your services as a handyman, for example, and you negotiate your price, you negotiate your times, and that flexibility is there. But now you have opportunity. So, you've got cost, you've got opportunity, and then, safety is really an interesting piece of it. Because of things like ride-sharing companies or Uber and Lyft, in cities like Seattle and Las Vegas, they've seen a decrease in the amount of drunk driving that's happening. So people no longer, you don't have to have a designated driver if you're going out on a Saturday night with a bunch of friends. Now there's an Uber driver or a Lyft driver who will take you to where you want to go and back, and that is increasing the number of fatalities or accidents as a result of people who are drinking and inebriated. So that's great. These are some of the sundry benefits. And it tells us, I think there's a psychological benefit too. It's saying that you don't have to have a 4-year degree to have a good idea that you can take to the marketplace and use technology to solve a basic problem. That's what the free market system does, and technology is just facilitating that.
Yeah, that is, for so much of this stuff is just amazing, and there's so many, you think about the types of, when I was a kid, we would go to a yard sale. Well, now, if I want something, I've been looking for some furniture, so I just bought a house and have a bunch of kids that I need things for, and it's amazing. You can find stuff, I'm hooked up with people across the state and pretty much anywhere I want, to be able to find the largest garage sale and to buy used things. Somebody else's trash could be my treasure. It really is amazing. So I think, but then there's a lot of people who, when we hear about some of this stuff, and you hear about the next wave of what might be coming, the driverless cars that are going to be taking, that are going to replace trucks and are going to be moving all the goods around the country. And that sounds a little bit scary, particularly if you're somebody in the trucking industry. Can you talk a little bit about that? What are the concerns when it comes to this kind of the destruction part of this creative process?
I love your term there, creative destruction. That's exactly right. So technology, part of it is that because it makes processes more efficient. That does mean that something gets lost, and in some instances it will be jobs. So you talked about trucking. I mean, there's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are about 1.8 million truck drivers in the country right now. And that could be at risk over the next probably 10 years, maybe 5, as we're seeing companies like Uber start to test automated trucks or driverless trucks. They literally just developed their first cargo of 50,000 cans of Budweiser beer in a truck that had no driver. So it's a cool story. But it also tells us that, if you're in the trucking industry, there may come a time where your role will be eliminated. Now, I don't want to scare folks yet. I mean, I don't think this technology is going to hit us within the next 5 years, in a widespread mass way. But I do think in the next 10 to 20 years, industries like trucking, like transportation, are going to fundamentally be disrupted. We talk about Uber and Lyft. That's just phase 1. I mean, phase 2 and phase 3 are cars that are not just driverless, but then you also have cars that are flying cars. But even with driverless cars, the technology is in some of our vehicles right now. My car has warning signals that go off every time I move lanes without using my turn signal. That's a part of driverless technology, and I think it's going to be inserted slowly into our day-to-day lives. But then it does mean that for those people who rely on those means to make money, to provide for themselves, that they're going to have to find new ways of doing it. Now, interestingly, some companies who are innovating in this way, they're saying, well, you know what, part of having a driver in a car is that you get the experience is the experience itself. It's that driver who you're talking to them, you're engaging with them, and that may not disappear. But I do think we are going to see some fundamental shifts. Now, shifts create opportunities in other areas. So, it may not be that we need drivers in our cars in 20 or 30 years from now, but we're still going to need people. There's still going to be opportunities that are created out of that. You're going to need people who understand the technology and can fix it when it's broken. You may need voices. We have Siri in our Apple phones. Maybe there are going to be lots of voices that will also replace, be able to speak to us in our cars. Those are people who are able to program those voices in there. I mean, I think there are going to be new ways and new industries that pop up that we certainly didn't envision. I don't think 30 years ago we envisioned even something like the sharing economy and ride sharing and home sharing. So things will be created, but some things will be, some positions will be eliminated.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know that there's the classic, the buggy whip makers being put out of business by cars, and then of course, but then car manufacturers came in and created way more jobs than they ended up destroying, and created almost a new industry. And you can see that kind of in the same way with computers. You might have thought computers were also going to replace a bunch of jobs, and I'm sure that they did, but then created this whole new. You think about everyone who's being employed by the internet and by the kind of the stores and the services that are now internet based. I think that people couldn't have imagined what was coming next. But there is kind of a feeling that this might be different. You go into a grocery store now, and you have all these places where you can check out by yourself, or you go into, I'm a Sam's member, and I've got an app so that as I walk through the store, I click on my phone and I'm able to check all of my products, anything I'm putting in my car, and I check out. And then I just hit something on my smartphone, and there's somebody at the door who keeps me honest and makes sure that I have about the same number of the things in my cart that I had listed on my iPhone. But it takes, it's sure not the same as somebody having to drag everything out of the cart and scan it in. And there is something where this automation, you can imagine that things like the stores that we're going to have change across there too, and that a lot of these these jobs, these kind of lower skilled jobs, might be disappearing. So, what do you think about that? Do you think this is something that will there be places for ways for those people to find new employment, or what kind of policies do you think government can put in place to help those people?
Yeah, so I think Amazon's new store, Amazon Go, I believe it's called, that opened last year, they're test marketing it, is a great example of what you're talking about, but even at an elevated pace where there isn't even someone to check your checklist versus what's in your cart, Carrie. This store literally has sensors that does everything. So it tells what you've picked up, what you've put in your cart, and it automatically then tabulates that and sends it to your Amazon account, and it checks, there's a cashless transaction, and you literally just walk in and walk out. That's probably where we're going, which means that, you don't need managers, you don't need baggers, you don't need checkout cashiers. Those are the types of low-skill jobs that we're going to start to see disappear, and even middle-skill, management-level jobs that will also disappear. So it's coming. The question is, what do we do about it? And I think the wrong reaction that we start to see with lawmakers is, okay, let's regulate, let's stop this so that we can protect jobs in the short term. But short-term policies are exactly what will speed up this process. So, for example, the wrong approach at a federal level would be to put some regulations on what types of technology and automated technology can exist so that it doesn't replace drivers or it doesn't replace cashiers. No, technology and innovation, what's great about the freedom to create is that it makes the process much better, and the products and services that we rely on better. Now, what we should be doing is thinking, what are the types of jobs that would not be replaced by a robot or by a sensor or by technology? And we have a clue. When we look at jobs that require creativity, jobs that require human intuition and intellect, the jobs that require you to think in the moment, the jobs that require a personal touch, those are the things that's harder for a robot to replace. So, for example, if you're a writer and a blogger and a high school student, if you're interested in writing, well, now is a great time for you to start developing your own blog. That's something that you can carry with you. And your ability to reason and analyze numbers and statistics and data, providing policy context to it, and then making it fun and quirky by tying in a pop culture reference, that's something that a computer simply can't replicate. And so I think when we talk about policy, we talk about things like higher education reform or even K through 12 education reform. We talk a lot about competition and choice. And part of that looks like offering to students the choice of what it takes to get to where they want to go to, and the types of opportunities that are going to be around. But, showing them that, it's fine to work in retail, but let's be realistic. We may not need someone to be a cashier for the rest of their lives. That's probably not personally very fulfilling for your whole life, but also we may see that disappear. So maybe what is it about retail that's interesting to you? Is it the business aspect? Well, getting you into a management program could be helpful. If it's the design aspect of the clothes, well, yeah, we're going to need fashion designers. Those are the types of skills and jobs that I think we want to start being creative about pushing our students to. I like to go on a little diatribe, about, just the traditional 4-year college degree being the way to the path to success. Our technology has disrupted that. You don't have to wait or go to a 4-year college to be successful. You can do that with a computer right at home, but it requires you tapping into your skills and your intellect and your ability. And let's not take off the plate, trades and vocations, all of those jobs that require the hands-on touch, your ability to be a florist and put together a floral arrangement. Those are things I don't see disappearing in the near future. But we've got to be broader from a policy perspective about ensuring that young people have choice and understand where are the jobs in the future and what it takes to get to those.
Yeah, it's interesting that education reform so often comes up because I do think you're right that there's kind of this model of going to school from the time you're, a little kid to your early 20s and going to get a college degree or something. That is, I feel like we need to start thinking about this more as a process, and that, a lot of what you're learning for a 4-year college degree isn't really useful anymore. And a lot of that money and those resources, it might be much better to kind of spread that out over time and make sure we're learning skills today, but then have some kind of educational resources in the bank so that 20 years down the road when when I'm all out of date and don't know how to work the latest computers or whatever the newest gadget is, to be able to have be able to use that to develop new skills and kind of ensure we have a lifetime learning process. But, I know one thing we've also talked about is how government has made it unnecessarily expensive to hire people. That some of the push for automation is actually a result of policies that are making it awfully expensive to hire that guy to work the checkout counter or to drive the car. You can talk a little bit about something that the government can do to kind of make it easier for people to find employment by making them less expensive?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a great example is the 15 for 15 campaign that swept the nation last year, pushing unions and activists pushing for $15 minimum wages at the state level in every state. It's from a good place of wanting to see everyone have, a bigger paycheck, but that speeds up automation, particularly because it targets areas like fast food, retail, even hospitality in some instances. These are industries that have low skill, low wage jobs. And, it sounds good to give those workers, a bigger paycheck. But, it has some unintended consequences. We've talked about that before where it comes to, loss of jobs, cut hours and things like that, even businesses and restaurants closing. But then it's also in the longer term. Well, a restaurant owner may say, instead of dealing with a $15 minimum wage that's going to increase all of his staff's costs and his paycheck, his payroll, it costs across the board, he may say, why not invest in some automation? Let's just invest in a kiosk at every table. Let people put their orders in. It goes right to the kitchen staff. They take care of it. And maybe there's a conveyor belt that brings the food back out. Or maybe, the customer goes and picks it up off of the counter. And that could eliminate table bussers. It could eliminate waiters and waitresses. It eliminates, lots of need for different staff. And so automation, when you talk about policies, particularly at the state level, even the federal level, they have impacts. And things like minimum wage increases are a great example of how it makes the cost of an employee more expensive, and it makes it more, from a long-term perspective, it makes sense to want to get into automation and to see that. So, we have to think through, okay, it may sound good in the short term, but what is the long-term impact of increasing the cost of hiring folks? That's short term, but in the long term, we have to think, how do we prepare our workforce for the coming changes? Maybe we're talking about helping people to be retooled with the skills that they need for future opportunities. Maybe it's ensuring that if someone wants to get into a vocation or a trade or an occupation that is not going to disappear, become a florist, become a hairdresser, open your own barber shop, become an EMT or a first responder, making sure that it's not hard to do that. And we talk about occupational licensing reform. Sounds really big and wonky, but all it means is that we're making it less costly for someone to pursue the skills and the certifications needed to get into different jobs. We've seen the level of the hurdles that it takes to pursue these industries increase over the years. And it's costly. It takes time. And for many families and struggling poor workers, they don't have the time or the money to go and pursue those certifications. Very often, the requirements are very arbitrary themselves. You don't need as many hours of instruction for something that you're not doing. So if we can reform the requirements at the state level and at the state level, we can start to give people options and choice in the economy, so that if their job disappears as a cashier or as a waitress and a waiter, hey, maybe they can pursue something as a florist. Maybe they can open up their own business. I think, and at the federal level, of course, scaling back regulations overall is a great way to ensure that businesses can continue to expand and grow in the future.
Yeah. Well, Patrice, thank you so much. This has been a really interesting issue and a topic that I haven't heard enough about. And to everybody out there who's listened to this podcast, I really thank you for your time. For more podcasts like this and other information, please come visit the Independent Women's Forum at IWF.org, where all issues are women's issues.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, or stop by IWF.org for similar content.